Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, October 7th, 2025. We have newly designated Tropical Storm Jerry out there with 50-mile-an-hour winds, pressure down to 1,030 millibars. This is currently moving off towards the west and the west-northwest at about 23 to 26 miles an hour. There are already tropical storm watches out for the northern Leeward Islands, such as the British Virgin Islands, Antigua, Anguilla, St. Kitts and Nevis, Montserrat, Antigua and Barbuda, as well as Guadeloupe and Dominica. Not all these islands are officially under tropical storm watches, but will happen soon as Jerry continues to intensify at a gradual rate and will likely become a hurricane on approach to these islands in the next 2 to 3 days. So anybody living on these islands needs to be paying very close attention as significant impacts such as flooding, very heavy rainfall, high surf, and damaging winds are all expected. Now here's a closer zoomed in view on Tropical Storm Jerry this afternoon and evening here as the sun is setting over this tropical storm right now. And there have been some notable improvements here with Jerry's structure. Yesterday, how I was saying that it was beginning to look like a bona fide system with convective banding futures. Let me actually stop it right about in here. So we saw a lot of deep convection really erupting on the northern side and pretty much in all quadrants in organized banding like futures here. That has continued to develop, and now we're beginning to see a very intense hot tower really blowing up right where the center of the circulation is actually tucked underneath. And you can see this here when I loop this through. You can see some very intense thunderstorms here building up right before the sun begins to set over the system. Now, while this is a positive sign that Jerry is beginning to intensify more at a quicker rate due to this deep convective mass over the system with organizing banding futures, it is not going to be able to intensify appreciably fast, and that is because of the fast storm motion that Jerry is encountering right now. It is moving pretty quickly off in this general west-northwesterly direction, up to about 24 to even 26 miles an hour. And that is pretty darn fast for a tropical storm to intensify within because of the relative rotational velocity here is not able to become well established here. You do have very strong winds here, possibly nearing hurricane force on the northern side. But to make up for that, because of the storm motion here, we don't really have a whole lot of very strong wind here on the southern side. So this is a closed surface low, but is extremely sharp here with very strong winds happening on the northern side of the circulation. Now, when we zoom out here on the water vapor imagery here from tropicaltidbits.com, one would really argue that, wow, Jerry is quite organized here with very good, well-established outflow in all quadrants of the system. And one would think that, wow, vertical wind shear here is very light, less than 5 or 10 knots, right? Well, that's wrong because we do have a little bit of vertical wind shear underneath this cirrus outflow. We got to understand the layers of the atmosphere are different from each other. Say at 850 millibars, the winds are different than they are at 200 millibars. And so what this means here is there's vertical wind shear underneath the cirrus outflow. And what I mean by that is if you look at some of these thunderstorms that billow up here in the last few frames, you can actually see some of the cirrus clouds here moving toward the system out of the northwesterly direction. And because our storm is moving directly into that, this is equating to a west-northwest vertical wind shear of about 20 knots over the system, leading to a little bit of asymmetries to the cloud pattern, but really not a whole lot here because this is relative vertical wind shear and not actual physical wind shear that the system is dealing with. Another thing that stands out on the water vapor imagery is this tongue of darker gray colors, indicating that there is a little bit of drier air in the deep layers of the atmosphere, and it's going to be interesting to see how fast Jerry moves through this belt here because if the drier air or any vertical wind shear shoves this drier air in here into the inner core structure that is trying to develop, this could delay the amount of strengthening that Jerry encounters over the next 2 to 3 days, ultimately meaning that it's weaker and it could go a little further west versus a stronger system would turn more poleward otherwise. So it's going to be worth noting to see how this patch of drier air out ahead of Jerry interacts with the system. So now the big question here is, how close will Jerry get to the northern Leeward Islands, and how strong will it actually get? So we're going to first look at our track forecast, and then we're going to break down your intensity forecast for these islands, because there are tropical storm watches issued and everybody wants to know how close and how strong this is actually going to get. So here's a look at the GFS 500 millibar geopotential height anomaly forecast, and the primary steering futures right now is this big subtropical ridge of high pressure that is guiding the storm generally off in this general west-northwesterly direction towards the northern Leeward Islands at a very quick rate right now. And you might be wondering that, man, why is this system moving fast? Even so, there's not much of a very strong ridge here to the north of the system, and instead is more to the northeast. Well, that's when we take a look at the lower steering futures here in just a second. Actually, we can look at that right now. And so you can see initially here by this evening and afternoon hours of your Tuesday and a Wednesday, you can see how much stronger the 700 millibar subtropical ridge actually is. And you can see very strong background flow here, ushering the system generally off into this direction, despite there's not much a very strong 500 millibar ridge to the north. That's why it's important to see if Jerry gets stronger, then it might be able to feel the 500 millibar steering flow a little bit more effectively than if it were weaker. And so stronger system moves more north faster. A weaker system tends to move further south a little longer. So putting this into motion, you can see how the steering pattern is pretty much straightforward overall here over the next, say, couple of days or so. Again, this subtropical ridge here well anchored to the northeast of the system, but it does balloon a little bit westward, helping to yank the system a little closer to the islands here. And you can see with what this all means, if we look at prior runs, you can see how this ridge here is a little bit stronger, and we're getting our 18Z in right now as a matter of fact. And we only made it out to 36 hours. So you can see here how this ridge is a little stronger, but also our system is moving a little bit faster or a little slower here. So again, speed changes here really mean everything with Jerry going forward. Okay, so that's a look at the 18Z GFS, but we have to go back to our 12Z because it's not fully in yet. We only got the first 36 hours. We can see how close Jerry gets here to the islands, and I wish I can zoom in a little closer in this sector, because if we look at prior model runs, we can see that this has shifted a little bit further south and a little bit further to the west, just a hair, enough to bring this a little closer to the islands and in line with what I'm about to show you with our hurricane models. So this would arrive, right now the timing is pretty much Thursday night into early Friday morning is what I'm thinking right now. Actually, probably even Thursday early afternoon, through about, say, Friday late afternoon into the evening hours, that these islands are going to need to be watching this very closely for significant impacts. Again, if this goes over the islands, the impacts could be quite devastating versus a system missing the islands entirely and moving to the northeast. Okay. So now looking at let's look here at the H-Wharf model, and this goes to show you just how uncertain the exact track of this system actually is. Because if we look at the H-Wharf model here, which is pretty much an outlier model, but it is in the realm of possibility here. That's why, again, until we get recon aircraft out in this, the models are going to do some weird, funky things that people don't expect. And one of those here is the worst case scenario here on the H-Wharf, and I will show you all of the reliable hurricane models in today's package. So out to 2 days we go. There is Barbados. Sorry, get my islands all mixed up here. So this is Barbados down here, and you can see where the system actually is. So safely away from Barbados here by Thursday early morning. And in fact, it is within about 170 nautical miles out. In fact, you're barely getting any winds out of the westerly direction with this, so that's good news. However, you might get some outer banding like futures that move over that might bring down some enhanced winds, but otherwise nothing significant for the island of Barbados by Thursday morning. But this is when the big concern really gets going here, and you can see for reference Here is Guadalupe Island, the Butterfly Bow Tie Island. Here is Dominica down here, and here is Martinique down here, and here is St. Lucia. Okay, and here are the other islands here of St. Kitts and Nevis, as well as Antigua and Barbuda Islands as well. So now that we got the islands names correct here, thanks to Google Maps, you can see where our system actually is in relation. And this is going to get, man, it is going to be a very close one, a very close call to these islands, and some of them actually. Especially over, say, Guadalupe, you could get tropical storm force winds by Thursday night into the overnight hours of Thursday into early Friday on the 9th and the 10th of October here. And on this model, this would be a formidable hurricane. This would be a major hurricane with hurricane force winds in purple and the beige colors indicating winds of about 115 miles per hour moving over these islands. Again, this is an outlier scenario right now because of most of our model guidance, so we have to take this with a grain of salt. But boy, if it impacts these islands directly, there could be full devastation on some of these islands. And this continues to strengthen, actually, even when it passes these islands. Look at this. This gets pretty dang strong with a pressure down to 935, 940 millibars with winds up to about 115 to 130 miles an hour. So again, something that we really need to pay close attention to when it comes to the H-Wharf model. And again, this would be moving over these islands between Thursday afternoon all the way through the time frame of Friday into early Saturday morning. Now, looking at the HMOD model, again, I promised how I would show all the different hurricane models, and we can see this model is a lot weaker, but also a little bit on the faster side. We can see here, we go back for reference point here. This is Friday, 0Z Friday. Here is 0Z Friday, same time, and we can see that the system is a little faster on the HMOD just by a little bit. And that, again, would make the difference between a strengthening system and not. But this would probably become a hurricane either way at this point. But you can see how fast Jerry is moving and how we don't have hurricane force winds immediately to the south of the system versus hurricane force winds to the north because of how fast. But yeah, this gets very close or on top of Guadalupe by Thursday night into Friday, and then moves over the rest of the Leeward Islands into the U.S. British Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico by Friday afternoon into the Friday evening timeframe of the 10th of October. And it really falls apart after that. And this model in particular has us getting pretty dang far west into the Turks and Caicos Islands by the weekend. All right, so that's something to consider here going forward. But that's not all. Let's look at our halves A model, and we can see our halves A is showing the same thing. Again, this strike over Guadalupe as a hurricane potentially here with winds between about 75 to 85 miles an hour perhaps. So again, that's why we cannot discount and rely on the GFS model showing that the system misses the islands entirely. That's not our wishy-well kind of trend in today's update, and I'll show you the ensembles here in a second. But the good news here is on the halves A, I would say, is that this is not a major hurricane like the H-Wharf was showing, where that was picking up on Category 2 and 3 winds. This model is only picking up on Category 1 like winds, but a very compact system here moving over the islands. And once it leaves Puerto Rico, that's when it does strengthen pretty quickly here into a major hurricane perhaps. Yeah, that is very strong right there. 140, 150 mile an hour winds there with a pressure down to 935 millibars. So that, yeah, the halves A does show strengthening eventually, but delays it a lot longer than the other models. And when we look at the halves B model, again, same area. Again, Guadalupe, Dominica, Martinique, really need to be watching this system, okay? And the Antigua, Barbuda area islands as well. Again, very, very close call here over these islands, and then it strengthens thereafter into a formidable hurricane perhaps over the next 5 days, but models are handling that very differently. Okay, so now let's take a look here at where this is going to be headed in terms of our spaghetti plot here on our model track guidance. Again, everything is a guidance and a forecast and does not mean that You need to get prepared right now. There are tropical storm watches out for these islands, and you'll see that on the NHC forecast. Because again, there is high enough confidence that at least tropical storm force winds are possible on these islands. But you can see most of the models here do keep this away from the islands, but I mean, my goodness, that's within 15 or 30 nautical miles off the coasts here of the islands in the day 2 to day 3 time frame. So this is going to come very, very dangerously close to these islands with the hurricane modeled over these islands in about 2 to 3 days. All right, so we have pretty good consistency that the day 2 mark here and the day 3 mark is here, with the track guidance remaining a little bit fluidy at the moment. All right, now as far as my intensity forecast, let's go to that really quickly here, because again, this is not really straightforward, and again, will depend on the speed of the system and other factors that get involved right now, okay? But right now, the best guessed forecast is based on what we saw on our hurricane models and based on my confidence level. I still think this could make a run for 110 mile an hour winds, especially at around day 4 and day 5. And so my intensity forecast is pretty much like this right now. So day 4 is up here, and then I max the intensity out to day 5 at 105 to 110 miles an hour. And I do show a 110 mile an hour hurricane at day 5, right below most of the hurricane model guidance here, which explicitly still calls for this to become a major hurricane, with the halves B showing a category 5 hurricane in a little over 5 days. So there are other ensemble models that I wanted to show you all to cover my back as far as how concerning this situation could evolve over the islands based on our ensembles. And we can see that the European ensemble has trended a little bit further west in recent model runs with its ensemble, with some members here over the islands as a strong tropical storm, if not a low-grade hurricane, with the majority of the members here still offshore, but they have gotten closer to the islands. So this is not a out-of-the-woods situation right now for the islands, and still trends further west could occur throughout the day today before this gets closer and closer to the islands. So that's why the NHC has tropical storm watches out, and you'll see that here in a second. The GEFS ensemble, some of the members too have this over the islands, but most of the members keep this offshore, but also further west with the trends today. With the Google AI DeepMind forecast calling for this to become, again, of course, a stronger tropical storm with winds of 70 to 100 miles an hour. But look at all the members here over the islands. So that is why you need to be paying close attention. And if these trends continue throughout the day, tonight into tomorrow, tropical storm warnings, or if not, hurricane watches could be issued for some of these islands over the next 24 hours. And because of this, the National Hurricane Center has shifted their guidance further to the west from the previous advisory here, now getting extremely close to the islands here, with the cone of uncertainty on the leading edge of impacting Antigua and Barbuda over the next 3 to 4 days here. And you can see the timing here for reference. Thursday afternoon, it's going to be getting close to Guadeloupe. And then by the time we go into early Friday morning, getting very close to Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, as well as Montserrat, as well as Anguilla eventually. All right, please take this seriously, because even so we have H's here, this does not mean that this won't become a major hurricane at this given time. There are some bullish forecasts out there calling for this to become a major hurricane. While I don't currently forecast it yet, if the guidance continues to trend upward, that might be the case going forward. So anybody on these islands needs to be paying close attention to this. Here are the chances of tropical storm force winds at a reasonable arrival time for some of the islands. And as we can see, tropical storm force winds could arrive in Guadeloupe by Thursday early morning, and then by Thursday night across portions of the U.S. British Virgin Islands, Antigua, Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, as well as Anguilla. with a chance of tropical storm force winds anywhere between 30 to 50 to even 60% chance. Here are the key messages for Tropical Storm Jerry as follows. Number 1, Jerry is forecast to strengthen and could bring tropical storm conditions to portions of the northern Leeward Islands where tropical storm watches have been issued. Very heavy rainfall will impact portions of the Leeward Islands on Thursday, which could result in flash flooding, particularly in areas of higher terrain. So keep that in mind. This should be a fast mover, but it is going to be one heck of an intense rock and roll ride for some of those islands. And you definitely need to be staying up to date here on the National Hurricane Center and also on my YouTube channel for the latest information. Here's a look at the latest rainfall forecast for Tropical Storm Jerry. And as we can see here, for Guadalupe, you're expecting to see 2 to 4 inches of rainfall. Barbuda, you might see as much as 5 to 6 inches of rainfall. Anguilla, Saba, you might see as much as 2 to 4 to even 5 inches of rainfall. And if you're in Puerto Rico, you could see 1 to 2 inches of rainfall as well. All right. An important note of this map here is this forecast is for planning purposes only, and a detailed official forecast will be issued by the respective National Hydrometeorological Service. Man, tongue twister there. For more information on that. Martinique, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines could get up to about 3/4 of an inch to maybe even about 1.5 inches or 2 of rainfall with the passage of Tropical Storm Jerry. But anyways, please make sure you have your hurricane evacuation plan in place just in case if you are told to evacuate by your local authorities and local officials there on any of the northern Leeward Islands in the coming days. This is going to be a significant impact to the islands, potentially with very heavy rainfall, strong winds, coastal flooding, coastal impacts, that sort of thing that tropical storms and hurricanes bring. I just really pray to the people that are going to be impacted by this that you guys please stay safe, because this is going to be passing through those islands probably overnight into the early wee morning hours of Thursday. All right, as always, if you did find this video very helpful on Tropical Storm Jerry, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon, hit the like button, and share this video with their family and friends on social media, because I will definitely keep you all updated, and a live stream might be initiated potentially tomorrow afternoon if necessary.